Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be bringing you this incredible retreat that Nan and Nico, who I'm going to be chatting to, are producing on the 26th of November to the 1st of December. And listen to the name, Erotics of Rupture. And we're going to start right there because that name is like, it's enchanting, it's evocative, and it's so the two of you and the work that you're bringing. So can you introduce yourself, Nico, and introduce this amazing retreat you're doing?
I'm Nico Athene. Thanks, Simona. And yeah, we're holding this retreat, the Erotics of Rupture. The subtitle is Tracking Archetypes of Eros and Rupture Through Touch and the Imaginal Body. So, as you're probably aware, patterns of Eros and Rupture rule our lives and sort of take us from behind and take us sideways and blow us open and over and trigger all our defenses and all our sort of desires and wants and needs and confusions. And so this retreat is really going into that using sort of three main methodologies. One is touch as technique, which works through the idea, initially it works through Betty Martin's wheel of consent, but using touch so that we nuance the space of our desires and our dislikes, really understanding where we're running towards something impulsively because we think we should want it, or because we're performing good girl or good boy or not wanting to hurt the other. So when we're not standing in that clarity, or when we habitually contracting, saying no, when we haven't actually checked in to something that might actually be a yes or an intrigue or delight or a possibility. So we go through that process initially, which is, very touch-based and very nuanced and quite delicate and slow. And then we look at the deeper desires and imagery underneath this kind of clarity that we begin to create. And that becomes much more about our archetypal patterning, our soul imagery, the mythologies of Eros and Rapture, which Nan speaks to so beautifully from an archetypal lens. And we use contact improvisation, which is a form of movement with the other that can kind of go in very many directions. It can go into the erotic space, it can go into artistic spaces, quite technical spaces. But we use it to cultivate this understanding of soul imagery and our soul imprints and our soul desires. And this is such a incredible, it's such a great methodology to work like this through the body, because we all have ego narratives, who we think we are, who we think we should be. And these narratives are kind of the narratives that we sit in to keep ourselves defended against Eros and rupture. And Eros is often a rupture, but there are other ruptures as well. There's grief, there's awkwardness, there's fire, our anger, there's amazement, and so we really work with and through the body to find these ways to meet these ruptures and Eros, and also to reveal our deep patterning around them, so that we don't get stuck in loops, or that we broaden the ground to have a different relationship to how we relate to these forces in our lives.
Amazing. There was so many questions and so much content there. I want to quickly touch on a few things that have come up, and if you can answer, how advanced is this retreat? Like, you're talking about touch, you're talking about dance. I'm sure that this could maybe bring up a few inadequacies in people, like, oh, I don't know how to dance, or I feel shy to dance. And another inadequacy could be like, oh, there's so much touch. Like, what does this mean for my relationship? So yeah, so those two points came up for me.
Thanks. Just remind me, point number one was
Down,
levels.
yeah, levels.
Yeah, multiple, yeah, it's really open to all levels of movement exploration. You know, we start, there is some technique given. You could be quite advanced in the practice, but you could also be a total beginner in terms of this work, because this work is quite specific. So I don't imagine, you know, most people don't have this full context bringing these elements together. So it is created to take you along and take your hand, and you know, we move quite slowly in the beginning. In terms of touch and partnership, yes. So, I mean, a beautiful thing also about this work is it really teaches one how to decouple the literalization of eros, the need to necessarily enact eros in a literal sense with someone, and see the desire as something you have to do. And I think in terms of couples, if you are in a couple, come knowing what your boundaries are around that coupledom, but the touch is not necessarily sexual. And I think consent, so Betty Martin's wheel of consent is really good for decoupling that. You know, we slow everything down so we don't, it's kind of that tantric principle of not just rushing to orgasm and not just rushing to genitals, and really checking in each step of the way with, you know, what it is you really want in that moment, or what your body really desires, as opposed to what your mind thinks it wants, or having to achieve something to kind of get over the awkwardness. And the contact dancing is such a beautiful way to also explore that, because it teaches us how to touch and how to have this incredible intimacy in a way that is quite depersonalized. It's actually more with life and the moment and the dance that's arising. That's not personal, and it's not necessarily sexual in the way that we've understood that and capitalized that in Western consumerism. You know, yes, it might be incredibly erotic, but it might, you know, it has nothing to do with your genitals, or and might have nothing to do with who the imprint of this other person is in your imagination.
I think you've really articulated that so well, and you've in this shown the slowness and the tenderness that you lean in to also these very advanced concepts. So in what you've just shared, I feel you've really shown who you are offering this to, and that it's all ranges, and that this work is so beautifully holding the beginner and the advanced, and it's really what you make of it. I think that's really special.
Yeah, I think, yeah, in a way, this is to me the kind of nectar of creative living and joyful living, is to find that intimacy, you know, with every moment, with the trees, with your breath. And it's been one of my greatest teachings for myself as well, you know, through this work. And touch is so evocative. It's so rich. There's so much we discover about ourselves, our relationship and desire to like the parental figures in our lives, to the romantic other, to the soul images that bubble up through this invocation of touch. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned how it has changed your life. You know, here you are now teaching this work. Can you share with us how it has changed your life and why it is you're called to teach it?
Sure, great question. So I began I began this journey. I began my journey as a dancer, working in a strip club. And I mean, some part of me always loved dancing. I was really, really into dancing when I was a teenager, and I was told it was something I couldn't do as a career by my parents, who wanted me to get a real job. And for various factors, but one of those probably being the one I just said, I ended up doing this work in a strip club. And after I had left the industry, and I mean, it was even during lockdown, it was sort of quite a few years later, and I was researching performance for part of my master's degree. I realized that I was so trapped in this performance of the sort of consumable feminine body that I didn't know any other way to move or dance other than this kind of seduction. And which also meant, on a very deep level, that I didn't know any other way how to be. And the great thing about lockdown, and there were many shitty things, was that the world became available online. And so I started to do online Buto classes. Buto is a Japanese dance philosophy, which is, I call it a philosophy rather than a technique, because it works by more improvisationally, letting spirit move through you, letting different tonalities, forces, expressions move through you. And it was all about not reproducing the consumable body for the American gaze after Hiroshima in Japan. So, I mean, that was completely apocalyptic for the Japanese. And immediately afterwards, Americans started moving in and trying to sell McDonald's and commercialize the space. And dancers at the time were like, well, we don't want to just dance this able-bodied kind of impressive dance for not only Americans moving in, but, in this catastrophe. What does it mean to dance that? Has no meaning anymore given the circumstances. I guess their question was how to dance at the end of the world, what to dance at the end of the world. And so they started at first dancing disease and old aging and disabled or differently abled embodiments, death, dying. And then the form kind of opened up to more Shinto elements, which is the animist traditions of Japan. And so they started to dance spirits, animate spirits as well. And Buto, took two different forms. The one kind of school of thought is that the form that we take, so their practices of taking different forms, allows spirit to move through us, different spirits to move through us, or the spirit that moves through us shapes the vessel. But through this exploration, I managed to undo this performance I had of this very gendered, very consumable embodiment. And it was utterly liberating for me. Began my deep personal journey and my deep interest into archetypal psychology. And the way I understand archetypal psychology now is that it's actually a study of animisms from the Western tradition through the Greek lineage.
Great. I can see and feel how passionate you are about this and how in rupture you get. You just get lost in this wave of this work that you love so dearly and now are teaching. So let's go into a bit of the logistics. Where and when?
Yes, so we are running the retreat from the 26th of November until the 1st of December. So it's 6 days. It's outside of Stanford on a farm that feels beautifully remote. That's held in this valley, it's sort of very private valley. It's beautiful. And we're also doing a curiosity evening for those who want to come get a little taster on the 31st of October from 6 to 9 p.m. in Hop Bay. So that's also available. But spaces for both are limited. So yeah, I do just want to say that. Yeah.
Great. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to this. Nico for producing this, Nan for holding this on the days that the retreat will be happening, and the curiosity. And if you want to get involved, you are more than welcome to find Nan and Nico on the portal. We'll attach all the links and reach out to them if you want to have a curiosity call to see if this really is a right fit, if there's any concerns that come up for you. And yeah, when you do go, please do message me to tell me how amazing it is.
Thanks,
Thank you, Nico.
Thanks so much.